Welcome, welcome. So we're going to do just a fun little idea. We're going to first start with the inspiration. Here's a photo. Oh, I just thought this was beautiful. One of you sent this to me. It doesn't matter if it's a blouse, knit, you can do it, you can finish it exactly the same. The neckline being a V, it's big enough that it can get over your head. So even if you do it in a woven, it won't make a difference. You'll just sub out the sleeve and make everything woven to where it will work with a woven. But I chose a knit because we've got this beautiful new V-neck pattern called Patty's Princess Seam Top. It's a great V-neck, it's right there, it's ready to go, and we're just gonna make one little change. It's gonna be really fun and really easy. I made two, so you can see a few little differences and just decide what you wanna do, what you like, what you don't like, and hopefully we can go from there. So we're just gonna cut it out exactly like it is. We're gonna leave off the ruffle. I did a long sleeve, or put on the ruffle. You guys know you get to do what you want. This is your garment. But I made a long sleeve, and then you're gonna cut one more piece, and you're gonna cut the front again. So that means it's going to become this ruffle, and it's not a ruffle, this piece, whatever you want, front piece. So there's a couple things you need to think about. You're going to add a seam. This piece in Patty's, it's number one, it's the front, is on a fold. You're going to put it on a seam allowance because it's in a seam allowance in the picture. I guess you could do it in a fold, but the picture has a seam allowance, so we did a seam allowance. You can make it as wide as you want. If you notice this one that we're looking at right here, fabric 2957. I love it. It's so pretty, just so pretty. It's a knit. It's beautiful. I just love it. So I made it a little, I finished the edges. I don't know, I made it a little more prim and proper maybe. So first we'll talk the pattern, then we'll talk pattern and fabric, then we'll talk sewing. So I'll walk you all the way through it. Just hang in. All right, so I made it narrower than the princess seam. So what I did is I cut this exact thing out again, but with a seam allowance down the front, although I cut it narrower so that you can see here's the princess seam, and you can see I cut it about 1 inch narrower than the princess seam, where the one I have on, I took it all the way to the princess seam. So how wide you make it is totally your call. I just take it all the way down or not. Like mine, I decided to leave it loose on this one, you know, and not finish the edges at all. This one, I serged the edges, turned under like 3/8, top stitched. So all these fun options you get to decide for yourself based on your top. But with the pattern, everything's cut exactly like it is. The only difference is you're gonna cut another 2 of the fronts and add a seam allowance down the front rather than put it on the fold. And that will give you an ability. We're gonna sew it in here. I'll show you how to do that, and then put a seam down the center front. And I think it gives it a nice vertical line to have that. Whether you attach it at the bottom, whether you don't, it's totally up to you. The fabric I have on is 2916, and again, this is 2957. Okay, so different fabrics, obviously different looks, and this is so soft, it just feels so wonderful on, you know, and this does too. I just decided to wear this one, who knows why. Okay, so that's the pattern work. Sewing it, I'm going to create the front, and I'm gonna create the back. So we're gonna go in for a close-up. It's when I connect the shoulder seam, the front to the back. I'm gonna show you how I did it. Very simple to do. Okay. So this is going to be, I'm going to take some pins out. I've kind of sewn it, and I'll unsew it. And I did it in 2 colors just to make it easy so that you could really see here what's going on. So when I go to do the facing, or remember I cut that second piece, I'm going to call it the facing. You're going to sew the center front seam, and then you're going to put the wrong side of the facing, no, the right side of the facing to the wrong side of the top. And you're going to sew it, and then you'll flip the facing to the outside. Okay, easy enough. Right side of the facing to the wrong side of the top. You stitch the V-neck, and if you just do it, you know, listen to me as you're doing it. Flip it to the outside. The outside will be all finished and pretty. Okay, so then this seam is sewn. Then what you'll do is you'll sew it to the back. So the dark is the front and the white is the back, and you'll just finish your neck edge. on the back. Then you're going to sew the shoulder seam, and when you sew the shoulder seam, because this seam allowance has been taken up with the neckline seam, the facing, it will stick out 3/8 of an inch. So let it stick out 3/8 of an inch and just sew right across that shoulder seam. So now what you're going to do is join the fronts to the back. Then you can see that you can take this amount, you'll fold it, and you'll actually cover that portion right there. I pressed it so you can see that that will be the 3/8, and then you'll just top stitch it all along. And it really closes up and makes a beautiful finished edge all the way, even though you're finishing the front first and then the back second. We've shown it in some other patterns, but just because of this, I wanted you to see it close up. So you'll do the facing, you'll sew it to the neck edge, turn it to the outside. So this front will all be finished. The seam allowance will be extra, it'll hang over. So go ahead and make sure it's hanging over. That's the neck edge and not the shoulder edge. The shoulder edge is aligned. You'll leave that 3/8 inch, and then you'll fold it in, and then you'll go ahead and top stitch that whole back section. And I did it on both of them, and it turned out really nicely, so that you'll have a little top edge section in here, and then you'll just back stitch it right when you get to the shoulder seam, and it looks beautiful. See, wasn't that easy? And it's beautiful, and it looks so good. Then you continue, you set in the sleeve, do the side seam, the whole thing, hem it up, and you're ready to go. And that's all it is. So whether you decide to go wide, narrow, short, long, sewn in, not sewn in, all these options get to be yours. The goal is happy sewing from Silhouette Patterns.